to the Virtual Island Summit organizers. I know that last year we were planning to participate. At the last moment we couldn't, and this year, thank God, through Vanessa and the Ministry of Economic Development, we were able to participate. I think if you look at the previous presentations and the whole idea of the island summit. Let's be honest. If there's one thing we islanders or islands in the world all have in common, it is that our own island is absolutely the center of the world, and it's a good thing that we think so, even though often not very practical. Having said that, if we look at the Caribbean Securities Exchange, people may ask, yeah, okay, but why a securities exchange in Curaçao? It's a very small island. We've discussed that already, or we have mentioned that we're about 160,000 people. So isn't that a little strange? Well, no, it's not. And in Vanessa's brief introduction, it was also already mentioned. International financial services is a big thing for Curaçao since the 1940s. Basically, I always say, we basically invented the trust business. And till this day, there is quite some activity in this area. The rules have changed, the practices have changed, but Curaçao is still servicing international finance to a high degree. A good thing is that, of course, that we form, and we've mentioned that before, that we do form an autonomous country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And with respect to international finance, a couple of other conditions are always very important. It is that, of course, that you are OECD and European Union compliant, which we are. Political government, we'll leave that for what it is for now, but it's also pretty stable, has always been. We have a fairly good functioning democracy. What I think is very important is that the DCSX is directly also supervised by the, I say here, CBCS, that's the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin. The Central Bank, as a matter of fact, just a nice small historic information, is the oldest of its kind supervisory authority of its kind in the Western Hemisphere. So the Dutch Caribbean Securities Exchange developing a capital market in Curaçao. But also startups and SMEs from all over.
Do you think, René, maybe Curaçao is a bit small for having a stock exchange? Because I wanted to tell you also in the poll we did in this Patable app, more of 50% of the people knew there was a securities exchange in the Dutch Caribbean. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that.
It's a good question. As I said, why in Curaçao? The first point, it's basically an addition or a sort of a logical next step of our international financial services department. I agree with you, and I think that's embedded in your question. To purely have a securities exchange for only our local economy, I think would not be a good idea because the economy is too small. At the same moment, we have, and we'll get to that in a moment again, we have one problem, not only on all of our islands, but all over the world, and it is that there is a lot of small and mid-sized enterprises that need financing, that need additional financing. And when I say additional, I mean in addition to the, let's say, the more old-fashioned ways of financing, which is, of course, banking loans and what have you. There is a humongous need for it. The only thing is that there are not a lot of securities exchanges in the world that are, let's say, affordable, and we'll get to that in a moment. So to repeat, indeed, the DCSX is very clearly geared towards functioning as an international exchange for the listing and trading in both domestic and international securities. And I think the international part is very important. If we look at what the DCSX has nowadays, we've been operating now for about 10 years. about 85% to 88% of the listings that we have are international listings, and the rest is domestic. So in that sense, while we are definitely not content yet with the let's say the total amount, we are extremely happy that the international portion indeed does form the majority of the business that we're providing. Very quickly, and there I repeat a little bit what I've said before. So we wish to create prosperity by connecting investment opportunities with investors. I think that's the most important thing. And that leads you to the vision and to the desire that we have, and it is indeed to become the regional financial center of choice for listing of securities.
And Rene, maybe you can elaborate more on the difference between a crowd-funded platform, because maybe it can be confusing, like a securities exchange and a crowdfunding platform may be confusing.
Yeah, well, I know what you mean when I say connecting investment opportunities to investors. Of course, a lot of people, a lot of our listeners will immediately think about crowdfunding platforms, and rightfully so, because that is, let's say, the past 6 to 7 years, especially in the US and in Western Europe. The crowdfunding activities, whereby a business basically directly approaches the broader public to invest in them for a specific business deal that they have, that has prospered a lot. Crowdfunding platforms have prospered a lot. As a matter of fact, I would really recommend everybody, if you're just slightly interested in this whole thing about the benefits of a small exchange versus or compared to the benefits of a crowdfunding platform, go to our website. We have, for the past year or so, we have been on a very regular basis been posting articles where we have tried, educational articles that is, where we have tried really to let's say, to discuss the issues, these type of issues, connecting investment opportunities to investors, including crowdfunding platforms, the difference between shares and bonds and what have you, all that stuff, at a let's say a level that is understandable for everybody, also if you do not have a financial background. And I think that's pretty unique, and I must say I'm pretty proud of what our people have done in that sense. Very quickly, how is because a lot of people, sometimes people call me and say, yeah, but the DCSX exchange, what is it? I mean, is it yours? Is it owned by the central bank? No, it's not mine, and it's also not owned by the central bank. It is here in the middle. You see, this is the exchange, and then you have here, let's say, the central bank supervision. Here you have, this is more the operational side, which we are not gonna delve into too much at this moment. But what I wanted to show you here is this part. This is really important. If you have a business and you want to attract capital, whether it is through issuing a bond, in other words, basically you're issuing bonds, you're getting small loans from a lot of investors, or you want to issue shares, which is of course a different plan, because there you sort of invite the public to become a co-owner with you. To do so, you cannot come directly to the DCSX, but you have to, here you see listings, you have to contact one of our 20 plus listing advisors. Listing advisors are the parties that will have the first conversation with you, and with whom you will, let's say, brainstorm on whether it's possible, whether it's affordable, how the process works, etc., etc. So that's like a really, really, really important player in the whole listing process on the Dutch Caribbean Securities Exchange.
And also mention, why is it called Securities Exchange? Because it may be also known as stock exchange.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, a lot of times in normal language, people talk about a stock exchange. The stock exchange of the United States and the stock exchange in Japan and blah blah blah. We have opted to use the name Securities Exchange because we are not only a stock exchange, we are a securities exchange. In other words, companies can list bonds, they can list investment fund shares, equities, DRs, it's depository receipts. And hopefully very soon, that's something that I personally am extremely interested in, crypto assets as a security class. And I put a question mark here. Yeah.
Crypto, you think it's possible, or there's any legislation like in place for that?
No,
how can it be done?
If you look worldwide, of course, we have a lot of cryptocurrencies. At least they call themselves cryptocurrencies. We have other tokens, digital tokens that companies have issued, and one of the main questions, of course, always by all over the world by two authorities, and that is by, of course, the tax authorities and by the, let's say, the financial supervisory authorities, the central banks, etc. Is okay, but what is a crypto asset? What is a tokenized asset? What is a tokenized security? And to my very humble opinion, we don't need to change a lot of laws. What you need to do is that at the moment that a company needs to attract capital and says, I don't want to do it in the old-fashioned way with shares or bonds, but I want to issue a token, you say, okay, sure, you can issue a token. And then, of course, there's a certain set of rules how you have to do that. But the concept is the same. A company goes out to the public to attract capital. Once you have done that, then the company has to be clear and say, listen, I would like to be treated as if I have now issued, for instance, bonds. The company checks that box, that information is filed, and I'm sure that our friend from Bearingpoint, Menno, you will like that. That information is directly filed with the tax inspectorate. So as of that moment, that company is treated as a company that has issued bonds. Even more, everybody who invests into that company will be considered to have bought bonds. In other words, when the company pays money to the investor, they can call it whatever they want. No, for tax purposes, it's going to be treated as interest income. So it's not. I think, and I may be wrong, but I would love to be challenged on it. You don't need to write a lot of new laws. You can work with the present laws, and the only thing is you have to make a check-the-box selection by the issuer of the security at the beginning of the issuance.
There's a comment.
Yeah,
there's a comment from.
Sorry, yeah.
No, there's a comment from Solomon Frank. He says it's a great idea to allow crypto because we don't want to stifle innovation. Thanks, Solomon, for your comment.
Thank you for your comment. So very briefly, let me see how many minutes I have. I think I have 5 minutes more. Is that correct? Yes, more or less. So how does a process go? Again, you're a company and you want to raise some capital. You've had your conversations with your bank. The bank at this moment cannot really help you, or they can only partly help you. Let me give you an example. I know of a case whereby a company that has been existing for 7 years, doing a fairly good job. They have their financials, not audited, but their financials. They want to expand. They want to buy over a small competitor. They need about 1 million, in our case in Curaçao, about 1 million guilders. The bank says, I can help you, but only with 350,000 guilders. To me, that's beautiful. It's perfect. Because what this gentleman in this case should do is go to a listing advisor, discuss the issue, tell him that he needs to come up with 350,000 guilders, and that if he comes up with 350,000 guilders, then the bank is willing to lend him another 650. So what you do with the listing advisor, and you as a company holder, you make a plan, you make that was basically step one. Then you go to step two, you make an information memorandum wherein basically, again, you explain who you are, what your experience is, why you need the money, what you're going to do with it, in other words, and how you're going to pay it back. That's basically what you need in the information memorandum. And then, of course, some legal stuff and some accounting information. You will have to put some let's say, your financial results of the past 2 years, all that kind of stuff. The moment you've done that and you issue 350,000 guilders in shares, and you're approved, then you are you can register. You're registered with the DCSX, and of course, you can go back to your bank and say, "See, I did it. We managed." Now, there's one step. When I said I did it, a lot of people think that if they go to a securities exchange, that means that they will get the money. No, you have to, and that's why under step 1, you see that there's also the word brokers. You need to contract somebody, a broker or a financial advisor or somebody who's going to help you sell, in my example of just now, the 350,000 guilders worth of shares. You have to get out there and sell your plan. Talk to the people, rent a little room, invite the folks and do a presentation. Mostly still for the first time, we recommend that you do it in person, and afterwards, of course, you can follow up with presentations like we have now through Zoom or any other electronic way of marketing. But you have to sell your product, okay? And once you've sold your product, then we got to step 4 and the remaining. Then the investors will transfer their money to the broker. The broker has the money, of course, at a bank. And once the 350 is reached, that 350 can be transferred to you, and you can show it to the bank and say, "See, I raised my 350. What about the loan now?" So that's I really very strongly believe in the combination of the partnering between the public market, the capital market, and the traditional low lending activities of the banks. Here I have, the time is not gonna allow us to get way too much into the details of what exactly is dematerialization of shares and depositing with the custodian. Basically, you have to understand that, of course, we don't work with share certificates anymore. Everything is digitally recorded and processed, and that's basically what it entails.
Okay, maybe I don't know how many minutes we have left. Maybe for the next time we can check about the differences between.
Yeah, very quickly, Vanessa, if you give me 30 seconds.
And the timing of the process. That's it. We can close with that.
Yes, what you saw now was the listing process for a public offering. Basically, the one for a private placement is exactly the same. Here we sort of in a graph, and of course we can share the presentation later with all of you. In a graph, you have all the steps exactly again in a clear oversight. The benefits, a lot of benefits for a company if you decide to list. They're mentioned here, and of course we can share that also with you guys. In one final remark, people are always afraid that it is very expensive. It takes very, very long. None of them is true, at least not with the DCSX. Count on 2 to 3 months, and the expenses are really, really very affordable. So I think that with that, Vanessa's gonna throw me out now.
Thank you.
I'm going to throw you out. Thank you very much for this presentation. DCSX is very, very good and strong and growing. So we really recommend you to take a look at their website. We share the links in Pathable and in the Zoom call to visit the websites of each companies. And of course, you can contact them all. And I would like